The silent scream, the Titan. Deep Space Array hummed quietly in the darkness between Saturn's rings. Dr. Sarah Chen sat alone in the observation deck, her coffee growing cold as she monitored the endless stream of cosmic radiation data. For 3 years, she had been humanity's ear to the galaxy, listening for any sign that we were not alone in the universe. Most nights brought only silence and the occasional automated trading beacon from distant civilizations that wanted nothing to do with Earth. Sarah stretched her tired shoulders and glanced at the chronometer. Another 12-hour shift was nearly over, and she had detected nothing more interesting than a solar flare from Proxima Centauri. She began shutting down the secondary arrays when every alarm in the facility suddenly screamed to life. The main display erupted in cascading red warnings as signals flooded in from 17 different frequency bands simultaneously. Sarah's hands flew across the control panel, her heart racing as she tried to process what she was seeing. The computer systems struggled to handle the incoming data stream. Processing power maxed out as translation protocols activated automatically. "Computer, identify signal origin," Sarah called out, her voice tight with excitement and fear. "Unknown transmission detected. Origin: Kepler 442 system, approximately 1/200 light-years from Earth. Signal strength suggests planetary broadcast. Array: multiple linguistic patterns detected." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Kepler 442 was listed in their databases as potentially habitable, but no contact had ever been established with any civilization there. The signal was unlike anything in her experience, broadcasting with desperate intensity across multiple frequencies, as if the senders were throwing everything they had into space, hoping someone would hear. The translation program worked frantically, cross-referencing linguistic patterns with known galactic languages. Sarah watched symbols and equations scroll across her screen, building a framework for communication with whatever intelligence had sent this message. Minutes felt like hours as the computer processed the alien syntax. A soft chime indicated translation, completion. Text began appearing on Sarah's secondary monitor, and as she read the words, her blood turned to ice. "To anyone who can hear this message across the void of space, we are the Velathi of the third world in our system. We send this plea in 47 languages, hoping someone will understand our words before it is too late. Our people are dying. The swarm has come." Sarah read the message 3 times before her training kicked in. She activated the emergency communication line to Earth Defense Command, her fingers trembling as she entered the priority access codes. "Earth Defense Command, this is Dr. Sarah Chen at Titan Array, requesting immediate connection to Admiral Harrison. Priority Alpha classification." Static crackled across the communication line for several long seconds before a gravelly voice responded. "Dr. Chen, this is Admiral Harrison. What's got you calling at 0300 hours with a priority Alpha?" "Sir, we're receiving a distress signal from an unknown alien civilization. They're under attack and requesting help from anyone who can hear them. Patch the signal through to my office immediately. I'll review the data and get back to you within 30 minutes. Sarah transferred the complete signal package to Earth Defense Command and continued monitoring the alien transmission. New information was being added with each repetition of the message. Population counts, defensive capabilities, and most chilling of all, estimated time until complete annihilation. The numbers painted a horrifying picture. The Velathi were a peaceful species of roughly 8 billion individuals spread across 3 worlds in their system. Their technology was advanced in agriculture, medicine, and environmental sciences, but they possessed no military systems whatsoever. They had never fought a war because they had never needed to. Their attackers were something called the Draktor Swarm, a parasitic species that consumed entire civilizations. According to the Velathi message, the swarm had already devoured 43 worlds in the past century, leaving nothing behind but empty husks drifting in space. They bred rapidly, turning captured populations into food sources for their expanding hive mind. Sarah's communication panel beeped with an incoming call from Admiral Rex Harrison. The old soldier's face appeared on her screen, his weathered features grim with concern. "Dr. Chen, I've reviewed the signal. This appears to be genuine. Have any other species responded to their distress call? Sarah checked the galactic communication network, scanning for any response to the Velothi plea. No, sir. Complete silence from all known civilizations. It appears everyone is ignoring the signal. Harrison's jaw tightened. Typical. The Galactic community has always been quick to label us as violent primitives, but when real violence threatens the innocent, they suddenly develop selective hearing. Sir, according to the Velothi transmission, they have less than 18 hours before the swarm reaches their homeworld. Their evacuation ships are too slow, and they have no weapons to defend themselves. The Admiral was quiet for several minutes, and Sarah could see him reviewing files on his secondary screen. Finally, he looked back at her with the expression of a man who had made a difficult decision. Dr. Chen, I'm calling an emergency session of the Terran High Council. Keep monitoring that signal, and prepare a complete analysis for immediate transmission to Luna City. This situation may require our intervention. The emergency session of the Terran High Council convened within 2 hours of Sarah's initial report. She participated via video link from Titan Array, watching as humanity's leaders debated a decision that could change the course of galactic history. Admiral Harrison presented the tactical situation with his usual blunt efficiency. The Dractor swarm consists of approximately 2,000 vessels of various sizes. Their technology appears crude but effective, relying on overwhelming numbers and biological weapons rather than advanced engineering. Intelligence suggests they have been operating without serious opposition for decades. Council member David Parks raised his hand. Admiral, what are our chances if we decide to intervene? Honestly, sir, we would be severely outnumbered. Our entire active fleet consists of 300 vessels. However, our technology and training are significantly superior. The swarm has never faced organized resistance from a military force. Ambassador Zara Okafor spoke next, her diplomatic training evident in her measured tone. We must consider the broader implications. If we intervene in this conflict, we establish a precedent. Other species may expect Earth to serve as the galaxy's protector. And if we don't intervene? Harrison asked pointedly. 8 billion innocent beings die while we debate the political ramifications. Sarah was called upon to present her analysis of the Velothi civilization. She had spent hours studying their cultural transmissions, learning about their society through the desperate messages they broadcast into space. The Velothi are everything we hope to find in the galaxy, she told the council. They are scientists, artists, and philosophers who have lived in peace for over 1,000 years. They have made breakthrough discoveries in agricultural science that could feed billions. Their medical knowledge has extended their lifespans to over 2 centuries. If we let them die, we lose not just 8 billion lives, but centuries of accumulated wisdom. The debate continued for 3 hours as the council wrestled with the moral and practical implications of military intervention. Some members argued that humanity should avoid entanglement in galactic conflicts. Others insisted that moral obligation required action regardless of cost. At 06:30 Earth Standard Time, the debate was settled by events beyond their control. Sarah's communication array detected a change in the Velothi signal. New voices joined the broadcast, speaking faster and with obvious terror. The outer defense platforms have been overrun, the translation read. Swarm ships are entering our inner system. We have no weapons capable of stopping them. Our children are evacuating to underground shelters, but there is nowhere to hide. If anyone can hear this message, please remember that we existed. Please remember that we tried to live in peace. The transmission cut to static. Sarah stared at her displays in horror as the signal from Kepler 442 went completely silent. After 18 hours of continuous broadcast, the Velothi had been silenced forever. The council chamber was deadly quiet as the implications sank in. They had debated too long. The decision had been made for them by the cruel mathematics of space and time. Then Sarah's equipment detected something new. A weak signal was coming through on a different frequency, transmitted with barely enough power to reach beyond the Kepler 442 system. This is Dr. Kethva of the Velothi Scientific Institute, broadcasting from Emergency Shelter Beta 7. The swarm has occupied our primary world, but approximately 6 billion of our people remain alive in deep underground facilities. We do not expect to survive much longer. The creatures are using some kind of sonic weapon to collapse our shelters one by one. If anyone receives this message, please know that we welcomed the stars with open hearts. We never meant harm to any living being. The message repeated twice before fading into static. President Victoria Hayes looked directly into the camera at Sarah. Dr. Chen, are you certain this emergency signal is authentic? Yes, Madam President. Voice analysis confirms it's the same species, and the technical specifications match previous Velothi transmissions. The President turned to Admiral Harrison. How long to mobilize our fleet? 12 hours for full deployment, ma'am, but at maximum speed, it will take us 14 days to reach the Kepler 442 system. Too long, the President said grimly, but we cannot let genocide happen while we stand by and debate. Authorization code, Alpha 77. Admiral Harrison, take the fleet and bring those people home. The Mars orbital shipyard had never seen such frenetic activity. Admiral Harrison stood on the command deck of the TDF Retribution, watching as 300 ships moved into formation. Red emergency lights flashed across every vessel as crews prepared for immediate departure. Captain Lisa Chen of the destroyer TDF Valiant reported fleet status. Admiral, all vessels report ready for departure. 200 frigates and destroyers loaded with supplies and ammunition. 100 heavy cruisers and battleships with full marine complements. Harrison nodded, his weathered face reflecting the weight of command. Colonel Santos, report on ground forces. Colonel Maria Santos, the gruff commander of Earth's Marine Expeditionary Force, stepped forward. 50,000 Marines aboard transport vessels, sir. Full combat gear, heavy weapons, and medical supplies for extended operations. We're ready for anything. The Admiral walked to the main viewing window, where the assembled fleet stretched across several kilometers of space. Each ship glowed with the blue light of active fusion drives as crews made final preparations for the longest military deployment in human history. Sir, Captain Chen said quietly, the crew is asking questions. They want to know what we're really getting into. Harrison understood their concern. The Terran Defense Force had fought pirates and corporate security forces, but never a full-scale war against an alien species. The Draktor swarm was an unknown enemy with overwhelming numerical superiority. All ship commanders to Conference Room Alpha, Harrison announced over the fleet communication system. Time to tell everyone what we know. 20 minutes later, the conference room was packed with officers. Harrison activated the main display screen, showing a tactical map of the Kepler 442 system. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to war. Our enemy is the Draktor swarm, a parasitic species that has destroyed 43 civilizations in the past century. Intelligence estimates they have 2,000 ships currently occupying the Velothi home system. Commander Sarah Kim of the cruiser TDF Indomitable raised her hand. Sir, we're outnumbered 7-1. What's our tactical advantage? Lieutenant Dr. James Park, the fleet's xenobiologist and tactical analyst, stepped forward. He was young for his position, but his brilliant mind had earned respect throughout the fleet. Our technology is superior in every category. Better weapons, stronger shields, and faster engines. More importantly, the swarm relies on biological imperatives rather than tactical thinking. They've never faced organized resistance. What about ground combat? Asked Colonel Santos. Park brought up new images on the display screen. Draktor warriors are physically powerful but operate on hive mind principles. They're used to overwhelming civilian populations through fear. Our Marines have superior training, better equipment, and most importantly, individual initiative. The briefing continued for 2 hours as each ship commander received specific orders and tactical assignments. The fleet would jump to the edge of the Kepler 442 system and assess the situation before engaging. If any Velothi were still alive, the humans would extract them. If not, they would ensure the swarm paid a price for their atrocity. As the meeting ended, Harrison pulled Captain Chen aside. Lisa, I need you to understand something. This mission could end badly for all of us. We're risking our entire fleet for people we've never met. Chen straightened her shoulders, her expression resolute. Sir, that's exactly why we need to go. If we won't help strangers in trouble, what kind of species are we? The Admiral smiled. Chen had graduated from the Naval Academy only 5 years ago, but she already understood the core principle that separated humanity from the cold civilizations of the galaxy. Compassion was not weakness. It was the source of their greatest strength. All ships prepare for departure, Harrison announced over the fleet communication system. Destination, Kepler 442 system. Estimated travel time, 14 days. This is not a military exercise. We are going to save 8 billion lives. The massive fleet began moving away from Mars orbit, one by one activating their hyperdrive systems and disappearing into the quantum foam. The journey would give them time to prepare detailed battle plans and pray that they would not arrive too late. On the transport ship TDF Guardian, Colonel Santos addressed her Marines. The soldiers sat in rows, checking their weapons and armor. Most had never seen combat against alien forces, but their training had prepared them for any enemy. "Listen up, Marines," Santos called out, her voice carrying across the cargo bay. "We're heading into unknown territory to fight an enemy that thinks they're invincible. The Draktor swarm has been bullying peaceful species for over a century. Time to show them what happens when they pick on someone who fights back." Sergeant Mike Torres raised his hand. "Colonel, what do we know about Draktor combat capabilities?" "They're strong, fast, and vicious, but they rely on fear tactics and overwhelming numbers. They're used to fighting civilians who surrender immediately. We're not civilians, and we don't surrender." The Marines spent the next 13 days practicing combat drills in the ship's training bay. They rehearsed urban warfare, boarding actions, and civilian extraction procedures. Santos insisted on perfect coordination because there would be no second chances in actual combat. On the flagship, Dr. Park worked with his intelligence team to analyze every piece of available data about the Draktor swarm. The enemy appeared to be a biological collective, each individual connected to a central hive mind that directed their actions. "Sir," said analyst Beth Cooper, "I found something interesting in the bioscans. The Draktor exhibit classic hive mind psychology. They're incredibly efficient at coordinated tasks, but they lack individual initiative. If we can disrupt their command structure, their entire force becomes vulnerable." Park studied the analysis carefully. "Good work. Send this information to all ship commanders. Every advantage helps when you're outnumbered 7-1. The 14th day brought an unexpected development. Long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures from the direction of Kepler 442, indicating major space combat in progress. "Admiral," reported the sensor operator, "we're detecting weapons fire and ship explosions in the target system. Someone else is fighting the swarm." Harrison felt a surge of hope. Perhaps other civilizations had finally developed the courage to act. Perhaps the Velothi were not as helpless as their transmission suggested. "All ships prepare for combat insertion," he announced. "We don't know who's fighting whom, but we're going to make sure the good guys win." The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system and immediately understood the true horror of what they faced. The space around the Velothi homeworld was filled with the burning wreckage of thousands of ships. Massive Draktor vessels hung in orbit like malevolent tumors, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with sickly light. But something was wrong. The swarm ships were not behaving normally. Instead of the coordinated assault patterns described in intelligence reports, they were scattered and apparently confused. Many were firing randomly into empty space as if attacking invisible enemies. "Tactical, report," Harrison ordered. "Sir, we count approximately 1,500 Draktor vessels in system, but their formations are completely broken. They appear to be fighting something we can't detect." The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Sarah Chen's voice crackled over the communication system from her monitoring post on Titan. "Admiral Harrison, I'm receiving transmissions from the Kepler system. The Velothi are still alive, and they're not as helpless as we thought." When shepherds become wolves, the truth was more remarkable than anyone could have imagined. As the human fleet approached the inner system, they received a direct transmission from the planet's surface. The voice was clearly Velathi, but the tone was completely different from the desperate pleas they had monitored 2 weeks earlier. Human vessels, this is Dr. Kethva of the Velathi Underground Resistance. We are honored by your response to our distress call, but as you can see, we have been busy in your absence. Admiral Harrison stared at the tactical display in amazement. The Draktor swarm was indeed under attack, but not from any visible enemy fleet. Individual swarm ships were exploding throughout the system, apparently from internal detonations. Dr. Kethva, this is Admiral Harrison of the Terran Defense Force. What is your current situation? Admiral, we apologize for the deception in our initial transmissions. It was necessary to appear completely helpless to ensure the swarm would commit their entire force to our system. We are not, as you can see, quite as defenseless as we pretended to be. Captain Chen pulled up biological scans of the Draktor vessels. Admiral, I'm detecting massive viral infections throughout the swarm fleet. Whatever they're dying from, it's spreading fast. Dr. Park's xenobiology training allowed him to understand what was happening. Sir, the Velathi didn't ask for rescue. They asked for witnesses. They've been preparing a biological weapon specifically designed to target the Draktor hive mind. The full scope of the Velathi plan became clear as Dr. Kethva explained their strategy. For over a century, they had been tracking the Draktor swarm's movement through the galaxy, studying the biological samples left behind at each destroyed world. Their scientists had developed a perfect understanding of swarm biology, including the neural pathways that connected individual creatures to their hive mind. We call it the silence virus, Kethva explained. It does not kill the Draktor immediately. Instead, it severs their connection to the collective consciousness. For a species that has never existed as individuals, the psychological trauma is fatal. Harrison watched in fascination as swarm ships throughout the system began shutting down. Without the hive mind to guide them, individual Draktor were incapable of operating their vessels or weapons. They simply drifted in space waiting to die. Doctor, this is incredible, but why did you send a distress call if you had the situation under control? Because, Admiral Harrison, we needed someone to witness what happened here. The galactic community has ignored the swarm's atrocities for too long. We wanted at least one species to see that peaceful civilizations are not always helpless victims. Colonel Santos had been listening to the conversation with growing respect for the Velathi strategy. Sir, request permission to deploy ground forces to assist with cleanup operations. Permission granted, Colonel, but I suspect the Velathi have that well in hand too. The next 12 hours revealed the full extent of Velathi preparation. Their underground shelters were not refugee camps but military command centers. Their evacuation ships were not fleeing the system, but deploying throughout space to collect disabled swarm vessels for study. The Velathi had spent decades preparing for this moment, turning their entire civilization into a trap specifically designed to destroy the Draktor swarm. Their apparent helplessness had been the bait that drew the enemy into a killing ground, but the plan had required one crucial element: witnesses from outside their system who could carry word of the swarm's defeat to the rest of the galaxy. The Velathi had studied dozens of spacefaring civilizations before choosing humanity as the most likely to respond to a distress call from strangers. Why us? Admiral Harrison asked during a video conference with Dr. Kethva. Why did you think humans would come when no one else would? The Velathi scientist's expression was difficult to read on an alien face, but his tone conveyed something like amusement. Admiral, we have been monitoring galactic communications for many years. We know that other species call you Deathworlders and consider you primitive and violent, but we also know that you are the only species that has ever intervened to protect refugees from corporate slavers. You are the only species that shares medical technology freely with worlds that cannot afford it. The galaxy fears your violence, but we saw your compassion. Dr. Park had been analyzing the silence virus with teams of Velathi scientists. The weapon was a masterpiece of biological engineering, designed with surgical precision to target only the specific neural structures that enabled hive mind consciousness. Admiral, Park reported, this virus is completely species-specific. It cannot affect any other form of life, including humans. The Velathi have created the perfect weapon against a hive mind enemy. But the most remarkable discovery came from Colonel Santos's Marines as they explored the disabled swarm vessels. The Draktor were not the monsters that intelligence reports had described. Without the hive mind controlling them, individual creatures were revealed to be small, frightened beings with the intelligence of children. "Sir," Santos reported, "the individual Draktor aren't evil. They're victims of their own biology. The hive mind overrode their individual consciousness so completely that they were essentially biological robots. The ethical implications were staggering. The Velothi had not simply defeated an enemy. They had freed billions of enslaved beings from mental bondage. But freedom came at a terrible cost. Without the hive mind to guide them, most Draktor were dying from psychological trauma within hours of infection. Dr. Kethva addressed the moral complexity of their victory during another conference with the human fleet. "We knew that liberation would be fatal for most of the swarm. A century of absolute mental slavery cannot be undone without consequences. But we also knew that allowing the hive mind to continue would mean the death of countless more civilizations." Admiral Harrison found himself facing an unexpected decision. The Terran Defense Force had traveled across the galaxy to fight a war, only to discover that the war was already over, and the enemy was revealed to be as much victim as perpetrator. "Dr. Kethva, what do you need from us now?" "Admiral, we need you to carry word of what happened here to the rest of the galaxy. The Draktor swarm is finished, but there are other threats out there, other predator species that prey on peaceful worlds because they believe no one will stop them. The human fleet spent 3 more days in the Kepler 4E42 system, helping the Velothi contain the aftermath of their biological weapon. Medical teams worked frantically to ease the suffering of dying Draktor, while scientists studied the long-term effects of the silence virus. Some individual Draktor survived the transition to independent consciousness, but they were fundamentally changed beings. Without the aggressive imperatives of the hive mind, they were gentle creatures interested primarily in art and philosophy. The Velothi offered them sanctuary on a remote world where they could build a new society based on individual choice rather than collective compulsion. Captain Chen found herself deeply moved by the sight of former swarm warriors learning to paint watercolor landscapes under Velothi guidance. "Admiral, I've never seen anything like this. They're completely different people now." "That's the point, Captain," Harrison replied. "The Velothi didn't just win a war. They performed the largest emancipation in galactic history. But the victory came with sobering lessons about the nature of conflict in space. Dr. Park's analysis revealed that dozens of other hive mind species existed throughout the galaxy, each potentially as dangerous as the Draktor swarm had been. "Sir," Park reported, "the Velothi strategy was brilliant, but it was also species-specific. The silence virus wouldn't work against other types of collective consciousness. If we face similar threats in the future, we'll need different solutions." Admiral Harrison understood the implications. Humanity had come to the Kepler 442 system, expecting to fight a conventional war against overwhelming odds. Instead, they had witnessed a masterclass in strategic thinking that put their own military planning to shame. The Velothi had taught them that true victory sometimes required patience, deception, and sacrifice on a scale that military academies never taught. They had also demonstrated that the line between justice and mercy was often thinner than anyone wanted to admit. As the human fleet prepared for the journey home, Dr. Kethva transmitted a final message that would reshape humanity's understanding of their role in the galaxy. "Admiral Harrison, your species has a reputation for violence that frightens many civilizations, but we have seen another side of humanity. You crossed the galaxy to help strangers without asking for payment or territory. You risked everything for people you had never met. The galaxy needs more species like yours." The return journey to Earth took 14 days, giving the fleet time to process what they had witnessed. Admiral Harrison spent hours reviewing the tactical data, trying to understand how the Velothi had achieved such a complete victory through what amounted to biological warfare. Colonel Santos found herself questioning everything she thought she knew about military strategy. "Sir, we trained for months to fight an enemy that turned out to be enslaved victims. How do we prepare for that kind of moral complexity?" By remembering that our job is to protect innocent life, Harrison replied. Sometimes that means fighting monsters. Sometimes it means freeing the monsters from whatever is controlling them. Dr. Park compiled a comprehensive report on Velothi, biotechnology that would revolutionize human understanding of biological systems. But more importantly, he documented the ethical framework that had guided their weapon development. They could have created a virus that killed every Draktor instantly, Park noted in his report. Instead, they chose a solution that offered the possibility of redemption, even at greater risk to themselves. The human fleet arrived at Mars to find the entire solar system waiting for news. President Hayes, Admiral Harrison, and Dr. Sarah Chen addressed a joint session of the Terran High Council, broadcasting their report to colonies throughout human space. The Velothi have taught us that strength without wisdom is meaningless, President Hayes announced. They have also shown us that sometimes the greatest victory is finding a way to save your enemies from themselves. Admiral Harrison's tactical report became required reading at every military academy in human space. But the most important lesson was not about weapons or strategy. It was about the responsibility that came with the power to intervene in the affairs of other species. We went to Kepler 442 expecting to be heroes, Harrison told the assembled officers. Instead, we learned that true heroism sometimes means recognizing when others are better heroes than you are. The Velothi incident established humanity's reputation as the galaxy's reluctant guardians. Other species began sending discreet requests for assistance with problems they could not solve alone. Pirates, slavers, and other predators found themselves facing unexpected opposition from a species that seemed to appear whenever innocent lives were threatened. But perhaps the most significant outcome was the relationship established between humanity and the Velothi. The peaceful scientists had demonstrated that intelligence could be as powerful as any weapon when properly applied. In return, the humans offered protection and partnership in exploring the galaxy's many mysteries. Dr. Sarah Chen, whose monitoring had initiated the entire incident, found herself appointed as the first human Velothi cultural liaison. Her new job was to facilitate cooperation between two species that approached problems from completely different perspectives. The Velothi see the galaxy as a complex biological system, Chen explained in her first report. They think in terms of symbiosis and adaptation rather than conflict and conquest. Humanity could learn a great deal from their perspective. The rescued Draktor established their own colony world under joint human-Velothi protection. Their art became famous throughout local space, depicting the psychological journey from collective slavery to individual freedom. Many of their works were deeply disturbing, showing the horror of consciousness without choice, but they served as powerful reminders of what the hive mind had cost. 5 years after the Kepler 442 incident, Admiral Harrison received a message that brought the story full circle. Dr. Kethva reported that long-range sensors had detected another hive mind species approaching Velothi space, apparently drawn by the same peaceful broadcasts that had attracted the Draktor swarm. Admiral, Kethva's message read, "We believe we can adapt our biological weapons to this new threat, but we would welcome human assistance in developing non-lethal alternatives. Perhaps together we can find ways to liberate enslaved minds without destroying them." Harrison smiled as he read the message. The Velothi had taught humanity that sometimes the strongest response to violence was not greater violence, but greater wisdom. Now it was time for humans to contribute their own perspective to that lesson. "Captain Chen," he called to his former destroyer commander, now captain of the newest human dreadnought, "prepare the fleet for departure. The Velothi need shepherds again." "Aye, sir," Chen replied, understanding the deeper meaning of his words. "And this time we'll know that shepherds sometimes have to protect the wolves from themselves." The human fleet departed Mars once again, but this time they carried more than weapons and soldiers. They carried the knowledge that true strength lay not in the ability to destroy enemies, but in the wisdom to transform them into allies. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of possibilities for those brave enough to choose compassion over conquest. In the depths of space, other civilizations watched and wondered at the strange alliance between the galaxy's most peaceful species and its most feared warriors. Neither group fit the established patterns of galactic civilization, and their partnership suggested new possibilities for how different species might interact. The Velathi had called across the void for help, expecting to find rescuers. Instead, they had found partners in the endless work of making the galaxy a safer place for all its children. And perhaps that was the most human response of all, not just to answer the call for help, but to ensure that fewer such calls would be necessary. In the future, the shepherd's call had been heard and the galaxy would never be quite the same.